hello again. So I am looking to, there we go, complete this. I realized there was another video that I could potentially make, a pretty short one, of my actual flyby of Venus, because I had forgotten that I believe I've got some configured clouds. I'm pretty sure they're through RVE, like using I guess the Eve plugin, and then RVE's configurations for it, that produces clouds for Venus, and so I can actually show the flyby. I believe either Nathan Kell came up with the clouds, or at least he re-enabled them in the RVE config. I think Thason might have made some modifications, but I really can't remember offhand. All I know is that I've got this config. Somebody else re-enabled or set up the Venus cloud, so I want to show them off because Venus is a really neat planet. It's one of the closest ones to the Earth, right? It's actually Mars, or sorry, Mars and Venus are closest. One is a little closer to the Sun, one is a little further away from the Sun than us. But I believe Venus, on average, takes less delta V to get to. And the Soviets threw tons of craft at Venus. Some of them succeeded, some of them failed. But I'm always kind of recreating Venera 1, one of the first craft thrown at Venus that failed. So we're just going to point out a couple of weird little bugs. Let's see, pull up my hyper edit. So you can see I've coasted, many days much closer to the Sun than Earth is. Zoom back out. Yeah, so we're way closer to the Sun than Earth. We've coasted for many days, yet we still have some liquid oxygen showing in the tank. So I obviously shouldn't have that. Pretty sure boil-off of liquid oxygen or cryogenic fuels doesn't occur when the craft isn't in focus, which is a shame. I think that's a kind of a bug that needs to be fixed in real fuels at some point, but whatever. This engine no longer has any relights, so even though the show is delta V, it wouldn't have it. So in practice, on the coast here, if I stayed attached to this bus like I did to control it, all the liquid oxygen would have evaporated away anyway. So all I'm left with practically is the high test peroxide that I brought along, although I haven't used it. I might have used a little during a mid-course correction, because when I originally left the kind of Earth's influence, I didn't have nearly as good of a here, let me focus on the planet. There we go. Didn't have nearly as good of an orbit as I have here. So right now I'm going to actually cross. Fortunately, I'm going to cross a bit of the sunlit side, so it's going to be a great flyby. So I don't really have any delta V in this craft, which is totally fair. The first probes you send to other planets are just barely going to be tiny craft that can barely even get within their realm. Heck, I think this one doesn't actually practically have enough solar panels to power itself here. So another thing that it's as someone who helps contribute a bit with Realism Overhaul, RP-0, etc., you learn the bugs, the exploits and glitches, and sometimes you have the time to fix them, and sometimes you haven't. And so I've noticed, for instance, I don't have very many solar panels on this, so I just actually lock the battery, and it will no longer consume power resources. So if you want to send a really early probe, or kind of send your first early probes, that is a glitch you can exploit. You can just lock the battery on something, power will no longer be consumed, and unlock it. So now I will have control of it, or should be able to gain control of it anyway. Hopefully I can just stage. Oh, come on. I might have to do something odd, because it looks like I actually can't get control of the craft, which is kind of interesting, actually. I was noticing some trouble before, like I actually don't, here, let's see, enable, disable, on and off. I don't seem to be able to click on anything above this separator, and I've noticed that for a while. So that actually could, I don't know if it's a solution to a bug or what, but I'm actually going to try something. This might cause me to end up wanting to, because I like to make kind of short, concise videos. So I might just end up restarting this, but here, if I go focus, I'm going to do a quick craft swap to something else. Let's go with switch 2. So I just completed a launch. I considered recording it, but I didn't think it would be interesting enough, but it was really interesting. I used what's called a Molnia type Soviet launcher. Of course, I launch everything from KSC. With the Molnia type launcher, it puts a pretty decent sized payload into orbit. It did. The Soviet early Soviet engines don't have restarts, so it's currently out at I actually got this through honest means. Launched from KSC, not from a Soviet latitude, and I'm far enough away the clouds are going crazy. If you see the orbital period and my orbital altitude, I'm only a little off inclination. But I used a Molnia launcher from KSC to put up a geostationary satellite. So I might launch another one because it was a really pretty launch. The clouds were just over KSC there, and I was doing a little bit of fiddling with the cloud textures. But anyway, I just wanted to swap to that other craft. So I might do another video in this of that focus view of that launch because it's a really stellar view, kind of a midday launch. And I definitely learned plenty. Oh, come on, let me switch to this other craft. Focus. I'm focused here. There's just all kinds of crazy interface issues in Kerbal that you can find ways to get around. Like usually I will say go to I call it the ORI, but where it'll show you the list of all your craft and you can jump, but just won't let me click back to my craft, so I think I'm going to actually have to redo this. So, yeah, probably. Because alarm clock probably, it doesn't have an attachment to that craft, unfortunately. What if I try to cheat it? Okay. Alarm, that's the name. Attached to, I don't want to attach to the active vessel. Can I use this to, no, I can't use this to grab any of the craft I want to grab. So even though I can see Venus and I can see my craft approaching Venus, or I could a moment ago, there we go. Oh, there we go, switch to, jeez. Crazy interface issues. Yeah, I put up that geostationary satellite. I learned a lot from doing that in that the final maneuvers, so where, say, one of the points of your orbit is really far away from Earth, out at geostationary altitude. The burn where you you coast out to that, and then you do a burn to circularize your orbit, so to bring up your low point. Maybe it's fuse bonkies. Nope, see, now it's working. So, weird glitch. When I had the battery locked, it wouldn't let me click on anything, and now I have the battery unlocked, and it will. Alright, so I definitely don't want this bus anymore, so let's see. I'm currently consuming 160 watts. That's, 1 unit is a kilowatt of consumption, so I should be consuming less, much less, after dropping that off. Let's see, and where is the sun? And I think I can turn these on. I think I set these, oh no, they look like they're already on. Let's see, nitrogen. It's not consuming the nitrogen, so I feel like I must have these off. Something's going on. Oh, maybe I locked the tank. I locked the tank. Good idea. Past me was smart. So this, I can't thrust forward or backwards or anything, so I couldn't slow myself down. And it's just a little bit of nitrogen, so I mean, really, this is probably kind of the most raw or raw video I've created. But as you can see, I run into lots of weird little bugs and errors all the time, just like everybody else does. And I usually just kind of do a quick, clean run through what I plan to do before making a video. And this time, I'd run through a couple of things, but ended up solving a few things on the fly, so you get to see more of that. So we are now within the sphere of influence of Venus. I just went through that transition just a little while ago, and it looks like, oh darn, that was lower before, substantially lower actually. So separating, so right now it's a bit weird, but I am using those nitrogen thrusters to lower this because I want my approach. So I couldn't, let's say I couldn't hit H and N, wouldn't do anything. If you look at nitrogen, I'm hitting H and N, they do nothing. But I, J, K, and L totally do. So it's not really enough to thrust me to do really anything. It's consuming tons of my nitrogen. But it is enough. It's going to cause me to rotate too, as you can see if I go here. But see, they're kind of close enough to my center of mass that this both causes a torque that's causing me to rotate, and also it kind of causes a little bit of translation, which is what's causing this. So sure, why not? Let us use this to get down to roughly where I was before. So I'll be doing a flyby. Even now, so at this distance, relative to Venus, I'm moving pretty fast. And this is a useful maneuver I'll often do to send a craft like this in anything, because you can look at delta, if I call them delta V maps, where you see, okay, how much delta V would it take to, say, to get into orbit of Venus or to get out to Venus. But in practice, I'm kind of curious why the line is being hidden. I'm not sure, maybe these clouds are at a high altitude or something. They're definitely not the right color. So in practice here, now that I'm here, I can say, there we go. So it would have taken about 1 more kilometer per second of delta V to capture. So now when I do another iteration of a probe to Venus, I just need to send along another kilometer per second of delta V to get a capture into Venus orbit. But of course this craft doesn't have that. But it's something I can learn from this mission. So I'm going to, I want to set an alarm. I just don't want to like quickly zoom past, because that is something I do all the time. So let's set a manual, what are these? Raw time, yes, raw time alarm. So time for, okay, so I am a day and change away. So let's say time 1 day from now. Make this alarm repeat. It's not the worst idea, but no. Say add alarm. Okay, so that means it's not going to warp past a day. So if I like accidentally time warped, too fast, it's not going to just zoom me by Venus and not allow me to see what I want to see. Interesting. Insufficient avionics. All right, I guess I don't have control. Oh, maybe because I'm at, it's because I'm at time warp, I think. There we go. Because a lot of, and some of the avionics modules, I don't believe they're all listed. Whoa, come on. I don't believe they're all listed, will only consume power. Here, I want to kind of, I'll cheat a little bit. There we go. So we get, as I always do in my videos, I cheat. I get into that orientation, I hit that, and time warp. So there we go. Now I'm not spinning crazily, and my solar panels are pointed at the sun, which actually gives me fairly neutral electric charge. Which is good to know. I totally could have honestly done this probe rather than cheating. But I like to hedge my bets and then learn and then do it differently next time. So let's capture a little bit of science, because this is technically an actual career RP-0 install of mine. So so if you saw me quickly click through, so let's just quickly do that slower. So science. And I think the default was here, so it just shows you tons of experiments. It's just a giant list. But this one shows what experiments are available where I am on the craft I have control of. So there you see the list. Tells me how much science I've captured in the past from them and how much each of them is worth. An excruciatingly useful tool. It's not quite as useful as this mod, or maybe for science, or there's something similar if my memory fails me at all times. Review, no, record, transmit. So I'll just keep an eye on my batteries to make sure I don't completely drain my battery. So what's the best? It'd be kind of nice if it showed me bang for buck, because each of these is going to cost me a different amount of electricity to reset, to send the information back. So it'd be kind of good to know what's the budget, how much power is, or will each of these cost me. So as you can see, it had the old experiment saved, and then I get rid of it, and it captures. I have this mod is set up to automatically capture science. Most of the time it works pretty well. That's why when I clear it, it automatically will collect the science. Data from Geiger-Muller. Okay, so I'm going to get tons of science here, even just during this mediocre Venus flyby. I'm high over Venus, and I'm going to get much closer. Let's see, review, record. No. Okay, so what do I have left? Micrometeorites. I think that's this one. Good. I'm starting to learn these, what these instruments look like. It's been a while since I did a fairly decent RP-0 playthrough, rather than just lots of testing and changing of things. Transmit, and I'm not going to do the biosample because it's probably not worth very much. Let's take a look. Recover, transmit, yeah, it's not worth a ton. That's okay, I just used it for the kind of the body of this probe because I felt like it, because it looked good enough for me. So where is Venus? So the whole point of this, why I wanted to make it a video, sorry for all the preamble, is I want you to see the clouds. So these are the clouds as they are in, I believe it's in RVE right now, or if not, it should be soon enough. If Pingo doesn't post his newest version of RVE sometime in the next week or two, at some point, someone will release something similar. I think it'll be a while till 1.1 has the mods developed quite to this. I picked up a rotation somehow. I must have pulsed the nitrogen jets. That's just a feature of persistent rotation. So see, I'm getting pretty little solar power. But that's okay. It's pretty much near the end of mission. So approaching the sun, I imagine, yeah. So this is flat. This flashed yellow, so it's warning me I'm getting close to a window. Okay, so now I'm 15 hours away. Okay, so let's add another alarm. Just a raw time for time 1 day. So at least I'll see it on the outswing in case I screw up. Okay, that's a great catch-all. Just catch that because it will jump me out of time warp in time for that. So as we approach, let me just make sure there isn't, oh, micrometeorite detection. Did I not transmit that? Review, transmit. Where'd you go, Venus? See, it's getting bigger in the sky gradually. The clouds are still going to dance like you saw them do for my geostationary satellite, but I am speeding up as I get closer. So I saw a recent, I think just today actually, within the last couple of hours, another pull request. I can do a gravity scan of a biome at this altitude. Okay. For Tantaris, Venera, so one of the actual probes I believe that hit the Russians sent that made it to the surface. So that's a mission I definitely want to do, particularly now that the clouds are here. So I'll do some testing if that. Sorry, I saw a pull request to GitHub for realism overhaul, and if that potentially allows me to use that part in RP-0, I might actually land that on Venus. But it might need like a pricing estimation and placement in RP-0's tech tree before it's possible to do that. A lot has to be configured for a part to end up in realism overhaul or RP-0 because it has to kind of meet actual size requirements and things, so to end up in into realism overhaul, and then we have to find some actual, say, pricing information for what it actually cost to build that relative to all these other prices. On some really nice view. So you can see the dark side is unlit. Here, let me dim this. I prefer the natural contrast. I just usually lighten things up so you can see them better. Yeah, so once a part is ready for realism overhaul, then it has to have a price, and it needs to be placed in the tech tree where it should be unlocked. So it might not have that property yet. I haven't looked. I know there's some parts I wanted to use that aren't ready yet, like the Soyuz. So the Russian tech tree is way better than it was in RP-0 like a year ago, but you certainly can't do everything yet. And Nathan Kell was making some contracts for stations recently. Yeah, this is, it's really bright, but I suppose that's natural. It's near the sun. Let me check the contrast of my screen to make sure I'm not unintentionally blinding myself. No, it's about what you'd see. Just toggle this for my crafts. Yeah, I will be flying over the northern pole, I believe, or at least I'll call it. It's up. Up to me is north. Yeah, so it's really nice clouds. I'm getting various examples for other experiments I could do, but I won't do any until I get close enough. So Venus, if you've ever looked at it in RSS, it's an odd-looking body because the clouds are being added by a mod right now, right? By RVE, which this graphical mod that I'm always using in these videos for the most part, because it makes everything look pretty, gives you the clouds on Earth and clouds for Venus here too. So usually it's this kind of red lava-y looking hellscape. Which I think is a real shame because Venus in practice in reality is covered by these clouds, right? You can't see the surface of Venus unless you use crazy cameras or you land on Venus. So the kind of human eye view of looking at Venus from flyby like this should be like this. You should see all the clouds. So that's why I figured it was absolutely worth making a video. So rather than seeing the crazy red hellscape you might have seen if you've played real solar system before, you get to see the clouds of Venus as we fly by it. Man, it's really bright. And you're getting a bit of an odd effect from the clouds at the edge there, but I don't know, this is like, to me it's like 20 to 100 times better than it used to be. So I'd like to note small little weird bugs like that because, you know, any improvement we can make in the future is a good improvement. But it looks amazingly better, which is great. Review data. So, you know, somebody would have had to create the cloud texture for this, put it at an altitude, tint it the right color, all things that I am abysmally bad at. So I really appreciate that someone did that. I'm good at adjusting cloud height, or, you know, kind of doing aesthetic judgment of texture, various really minor, in my opinion, graphical things to make my config and share my config for scatter or RV better. Oh, nice! You can even see the reflection of Venus color on the panels there. So we are approaching time to AP. Oh, weird. Am I at AP? No, not quite. Oh, interesting. So MechJab is showing the wrong, it's not showing, oh, AP, sorry. Approaching Perry, which is the opposite. So of course that's why it's not showing that way. And I'm pretty sure I checked this. So if you look at Venus information, one of these buttons, here we go. If you're ever curious, you know, if you want to avoid the atmosphere, or the opposite, if you want to hit the atmosphere, this tells me right here, it pulls the information from the Copernicus files, I think, tells me atmosphere present, yes, at 150 kilometers, so I am going to be above the clouds. So good. I'm going to be above the clouds of Venus. So obviously that's, you know, that's an estimation. The clouds, because the atmosphere of Venus is so thick, the clouds do extend really quite high. But just like for Earth, the atmosphere goes really high. The International Space Station is being slowly dragged down by the super thin, high level atmosphere of Earth. But in this case, if it was modeling the atmosphere as it is up to 200, 300, 400 kilometers, would have a super tiny effect. I must be just clicking the wrong things. There we go. It would have such a tiny effect on the craft that we, you know, ultimately an estimation is made when the atmospheric thickness is going to be low enough that we should just model it as basically zero above a certain altitude. And I think that's different for many planets, for Mars, for Venus, for Earth, for, is it Titan? Titan also has an atmosphere. Oh wow, this ended up as a lot longer of a video as I thought, but now that I've got most of the science I want, I will just complete this flyby now, just so you can see. So we're much closer to the sun. See, more detail could be added to the cloud, I suppose. You can see the North Pole there where the texture kind of gets pulled together. But still, it looks amazingly better than it did before with no clouds. So thank you to whoever, yeah, I believe Nathan Kell, he reactivated it, because I think a config was set up in RV, but Pingo Pete had it off. And Pingo Pete probably created it originally, so yeah, there's some kind of odd glitches as you do a flyby, but whatever. To me, it's 20 to 100 times better than old Venus was, so thank you to everybody who made that better. And so we flew by the bright side. You know, our craft would have, an actual craft with actual instruments that will be sent later can actually get some nice pictures of the planet by doing that. But we captured just a little bit of science, and we'll be doing a flyby. And I now learned that I would need about 1 kilometer per second of delta V in order to capture at Venus, so I could, you know, do even more science here. Or also, you know, if in the future if I get a contract for that. So that's it. The whole craft. I did 2 previous videos where you got to see it launch, you got to see it sent to Venus. So that's the whole life cycle of this probe. It you know, build it, launch it, send it off to Venus, and that's it. Now there's nothing it can do. The batteries will just die. So it's being influenced by Venus. It did a swing by, so it swung over the pole. It's a really hard, I find relative velocity a really hard thing to imagine well, but by doing this, we came in at this angle, we're going to be knocked down. So it's going to throw us, by leaving the Venus influence in that direction, will kind of throw us off the plane. So as you can see, this darker line, when we leave the sphere of influence of Venus, that's the path we'll be on. Our inclination was substantially changed relative to Venus. So we are very not likely to see Venus again. And because like that velocity change was only in that direction, say just down or just up, rather than kind of being spun forward or back, we'll stay kind of near the orbit of Venus. If it kind of flung us further forward out, we'd be thrown, maybe we might be able to encounter Earth again. So a flyby can do that. I've never successfully done a flyby where you would say, leave Earth, fly by Venus, and then the gravity of Venus helps you to kind of sling back to Earth again. Or if we passed Venus in such a way that it slowed us down relative to the orbit of Venus, we would get a bit closer to Mercury. So all kinds of interesting gravitational maneuvers like that are possible thanks to relative velocities of the orbit and the planet that NASA has, and other space agencies have made massive use of, because we didn't have large, heavy throw rockets for quite some time. So it's a good way to make use of better use of your launchers to, say, do a swing by Venus to get to Mars, or do multiple swing bys of other planets to save you delta V, because the less delta V you have to spend to do something, the more payload you can bring along. It pretty much always results in a longer maneuver overall, but as long as you can plan for that, you can get it done. So there we go. As we leave Venus, we flew by the sunny side, we flew around the dark side, and now this craft is just dead. It's just going to float away. Oh wow, it's actually producing a substantial amount of power. Oh, I know why. It's because the avionics weren't consuming power. So I kind of wish there was. Yep, delete. Thank you. So that was my kind of my safety rope. Just in case I accidentally swung by, I still would have got to see Venus at this point, rather than just be launching, sending it to Venus, and only getting to see it for a few seconds. But I kind of wish there was a way to. There it is. Of course there is. On many craft, it does have that option. So I could turn off avionics. So it says, warning, you can't control it, but. So this is the more honest way to do it, rather than to lock the batteries. But you can't do this on everything. It might show it in the VAB now. I know it didn't used to show when you construct whether an avionics pack has this option. We might just want to add it to the text. Oh, and I now have this mod. It's called Fusebox, I think. It doesn't work perfectly in every circumstance, but it's useful in this case where it just has to look at what are my solar panels bringing in for power, what is the drain of my craft, so it can tell me how long it's going to take 8 days for my battery to die in its current orientation. So let's say if I do this, those numbers would change. Well, more than just 1 minute per minute, but I won't bore you with that. If I caused it to spin around, and solar panels were no longer, there we go, you can see, so the angle here, this exposure number will be gradually decreasing. There we go. And so it's telling that it's getting less power, so we can tell, okay, the batteries will drain sooner. It's a useful little mod. I kind of wish I made better use of it in the VAB, but I still have things to learn. But yeah, thanks for joining me on the Venus flyby of my Soviet-based KSE-launched RP-0 kind of series. There's one other contract I do want to test out before I more or less abandon this install, though, which is the new station contracts that Nathan Kell has added. So to give a reason to sending people into low Earth orbit for a long time, there will now be some contracts that I want to test because they're fairly recent. They're the kind of first of their kind in RP-0. Missions for station use and duration periods in low Earth orbit. Yeah, thanks for joining me on the Venus flyby. I might do a video of that, but it'll probably just mostly be testing to confirm the contract works as desired. Goodbye.